I used to be the girl at university whose dorm room was filled with quotes on the pinboard, attached to fairy lights, who had self-help books on her desk, and who listened to inspirational podcasts, read self-help books, and listened to happy music. But despite how great all of those things are, I still consistently found myself crying onto my pillow, or angry at what someone had said, or feeling left out of a situation and like I didn't know who I was or where I fit at university. 7 years on from that, I now definitely very much feel like I fit where I am. I run life-changing self-empowerment retreats. I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, and I've built an online following that helps so many other people figure this stuff out for themselves. But aside from the business and the career and the online following, the most important thing in what I learned over that span of time is how to actually make self-help work, how to actually rewire your brain and what works and what doesn't. I get so many people messaging me, commenting on my posts, applying for my retreats, saying, I've tried everything, nothing's working. I've read the books, I've listened to the podcasts, I've even tried therapy. I feel like I've tried everything and nothing has worked. So if that is you as well, I feel you, I get you, I was you. And in today's episode, we are going to dive into why this standard classic self-help works, why the things that you have tried may not have actually made a difference, or possibly made a difference for a day or a week or a month, but then faded off. And then once again, you're back into this emotional roller coaster of life. I'm in a place now where I wake up every single day genuinely excited for the day, where I no longer am filled with, consumed by regrets, overthinking, anxiety, and I am not special. I was the most emotional human alive. I would cry at everything. I would get frustrated at everything. I was brought up in a family who, if they didn't like something, they would see red. I was around a lot of violence in my childhood. I developed control mechanisms in order to feel a sense of safety. I have gone through a lot, and so probably have you. But if I can get to a place where I'm no longer falling apart because I didn't get a job interview or because a partner broke up with me, then you can too. So before I ramble on anymore, let's get into it. These are all of the self-help books that I have picked up from just walking around my room for a couple of minutes and picking up whatever I could find. And there's probably more in my room than even this stack. And what all of these books do is they teach you something. They teach you an idea or a concept, or they give you a suggestion of something to do, a tool to use, meditation. This book is all about eudaimonia, the word Aristotle used to describe almost like happiness that is a lifestyle. Then we have a book about breakup and the beyond, 10 rules to break and 10 rules to make. The Untethered Soul, a classic. Men are from Mars, Women are from Venus, a book about manifestation, the Let Them theory, and then some business books. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with self-help books. However, there is something wrong with the way that most people use them. So let's fix that. Most people use self-help books in one of two ways. One, they feel like they want to make a change, and so they think, I'm going to order a book, or they see a book that inspires them and they think, I want to learn that. That looks interesting, let me buy the book. They get the dopamine rush of buying it, they start reading it, they feel a little bit inspired. Maybe they don't even finish the book. Let's be honest, how many books have you started and not finished? But if they do make it through a good portion of the book, they feel a bit better, they feel like they have something that's going to possibly change their life, and they stick to it for that day. Maybe they stick to it for a few days, or even a week, or even a month. But then it starts to tail off. They start thinking, well, my life hasn't changed. This can't be helping. Evidently, I'm either broken, it's not working, or I just need to go and find a different tool. And then they go and buy another book and start the same cycle all over again. Or the second way that you might be using self-help books is when you are feeling sad, when you are feeling really low and you need a pick-me-up. This was definitely a way I used to use them. Not necessarily the big fat books that are teaching you something, but the ones that make you feel a bit better. A bit like listening to a sad song on a sad day. It's like a comfort blanket. But when we read these motivational books or these books that make us feel a little better momentarily, what they're doing is they are dealing with the conscious part of your brain. They are making you, in the moment, feel a bit better. However, this is where we need to look at neuroscience to understand why that is not the best approach. Because on the surface, it's like, well, Izzie, if it's making me feel better, then why is it a bad thing? And this is what the neuroscience says. The conscious part of your brain, so as the name suggests, the part of your brain that you are most conscious of, is actually responsible for only 5% of your brain's activity. Whereas the subconscious part of your brain, the part where the beliefs come from, the parts that maybe have a little bit of that childhood trauma, the parts where you judge somebody with your conscious mind, but the beliefs behind that judgment are in your subconscious mind, and so you know that you are judging them and you know what you do or don't like about that person, but you don't necessarily know why or where it came from because it is a subconscious belief. Well, that subconscious part of your brain is responsible for roughly 95% of your brain activity. So if we want to really make a change to how we feel and start rewiring our brain, doing things that just engage the conscious part of the brain, that 5%, isn't really going to do much. And it's also going to require a huge amount of willpower and effort to try and remember each time consciously to try and make this change. And so you're using a huge amount of brain power for something that's only really going to change 5%. So we want to start focusing on the subconscious, the part that is responsible for 95% of your brain's activity, which reading a singular self-help book is most likely not going to help you achieve. So how do we do that? Well, our subconscious is made up of so many beliefs, and our beliefs are often developed when we're young. So we create beliefs based on what our parents told us, what we were taught at school, interactions that we witnessed or were a part of. Things that we weren't even aware of and can't even identify today started to develop and lead to certain beliefs. And when we have a belief, it means we feel really strongly about something and believe something to be truth. It's essentially that we view something as utter fact, not necessarily because it is fact, but because that is what an initial thought and then thousands of repetitions of that thought has led us to solidify in our subconscious brain. And so you might be walking through the shops, see something that you like and say, I can't afford that. That is a conscious thought, but that thought stems from beliefs so deep down. Maybe when you were younger, your mum or your dad used to say, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford that, put that down. Or you had a moment where you tried to buy something and a card was declined. And so deep down in your subconscious, you believe that you can't fully afford things. And that is the fact. But the actual fact is that the thing that you saw in the shop, you could afford. But maybe it was just more money than you'd want to spend on that thing at that time. But this core belief made you conclude, I can't afford that, even though you actually could. So these beliefs form our assumptions about ourselves, about other people, and about the world in full. So maybe now take the time, take the opportunity to have a think about a belief that you have. It could be about yourself. I am not clever. I am not a runner. I am not the smart one. I am the trouble child. Things just never seem to work out for me. I have ADHD and therefore I can't focus. Identify one of these beliefs and pop it down in your notes page, write it down, or just hold it in your mind for the rest of this video. If you had the belief that you were not a runner, what might that have held you back from? Maybe participating in things with friends, doing something like high rocks because it involves running. Maybe it led to you putting on some weight over COVID because you didn't feel like you could do any exercise because the only option was to walk or run. Those are just a few examples I've plucked off the top of my head. So what I want you to do with your belief that you've noticed that you have that is maybe limiting you in some way is to identify all the ways in which it has been limiting you. Pause this here if you need to, but have a real think about what has this thing made me lose out on? What have I lost out on because of this belief? It's not to say that you would go back and do things differently. It's just to identify the consequences that having this belief has had. Now, this is where the problem with classic self-help comes in. If you have a core belief and then read a self-help book and try and exercise from that book, and it directly disagrees with the belief, then you might be excited to try the tool because you want to help yourself and overcome this thing. But because it disagrees at the belief level, it will always end up in frustration and an inability to stick with it. So in the instance of I am not a runner, you might have read Atomic Habits, looked at habit stacking, and realized that as soon as you get home, you are going to have your trainers and your gym kit by the door, and you are going to get changed then and there and head straight out the door for a run. Okay, great. You have overcome a barrier, an obstacle in you not going for a run. But if your belief is, I am not a runner, it doesn't matter how easy you make running, you're going to have so much resistance around it. Now, yes, if you were to have your shoes and your kit at the door, and each day for a month or two you were to get back and put your gym kit on and go for a run, and you were able to stick to that, then yes, eventually it would start to change the beliefs that you have about it. You maybe would start to realize that you do like running and you can run, and then someone says, oh my God, you're so good at running. And you go to say, oh, I'm not a runner, but actually you realize in that moment that now you are. But that takes, again, a huge amount of willpower, a huge amount of inner motivation to do that. And it is going hard against core beliefs, and that's why it is so difficult. So we're not looking at that. We're not looking at that part that relies on you needing to kick yourself up the bum every day to do this thing. We are looking at how to make it easier. So you have looked at your core belief, you have looked at everything that it has led you to miss out on, and now we want to challenge it. Ask yourself, why do you believe this? Why do you believe this to be true? And then after that, I want you to write a list of reasons why that might not be true. So again, going back to the example of I am not a runner, you would write a list adding, okay, well, actually I was quite good at running when I was in school. I don't necessarily dislike running, I just don't feel like I'm very good at it. You start pointing out things that help you to realize that this belief might not actually be black and white, and there are nuances within it. There are ways in which it is kind of true, but also ways in which it is not. We need to challenge this belief by asking why, by looking at other perspectives in order to break loose from this cage, from these chains that have kept us in this belief, kept us safe, kept us stuck, kept us held back from things that we might have actually wanted to do. So after you've done that list, I want you to ask yourself, what could I achieve? What could I achieve in the next week, month, year, 5 years, 10 years if I changed my belief around this? If I believed I am a runner, well, I might actually get a little bit fitter. I might not become a marathon runner, but I might go out on more runs. I have a friend that has always suggested us going running together, and I've always said I'm not a runner. So maybe I might end up developing my friendship with her because I go on these runs with her. It could give me a new community to be a part of. It could give me something to do outside of work. It could help my mental health. I would feel better in my body. There are so many positive outcomes that can occur if we just let ourselves be flexible with our belief. Like, your belief could be that you have to be in a 9-to-5. Well, do you? Why do you believe you have to be in a 9-to-5? Oh, well, it's because my parents were in a 9-to-5 and they didn't approve of it. Right, okay. And what have you lost out on because you've been in a 9-to-5? Well, I have lost out on moving forwards with a business idea I had, or I had a friend who wanted to do a business venture with me and I shut it down because I didn't think it was a sensible thing to do. It's meant I've missed out on things, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we now have the pain point. We know now what this has led you to miss out on. And that bit might be a little bit difficult because you are so in this belief that it is hard to kind of think about what bad things it has caused for you because you feel so deep down that it is a good belief. And then we ask, okay, well, how could I see this differently? Well, maybe not all people who are self-employed end up in bad spots. Okay, yes, maybe this belief has been formed by that one cousin that went self-employed and it all went horribly wrong, but maybe there are more stories than that. Maybe there are lots of success stories. Maybe I could have a part-time job and build something on the side. Okay, so what would happen if you change this belief? What could happen over the next 6 months, year, 5 years? Well, I could get a little bit more space from my job. I could have more time with my family. I could build something I'm really passionate about. Do you see what we're doing? We are not saying this belief is wrong, this belief is bad. We're just saying that often our beliefs feel like concrete to us, but perhaps we've just allowed them to harden over the actual truth. So before you read any more self-help books, identify a belief. Identify a belief that you have about why you can't be happy, why you can't be the weight you want to be, why you can't become self-employed, raise money, start a charity, become an actor, whatever it is that you feel like is holding you back. Step 1, identify what the belief is. Step 2, ask yourself why you think you have that belief. Were there family members, experiences that you had when you were younger, anything that caused you to come to that conclusion that this is fact. Step 3, challenge yourself to list the consequences that this belief has led you to have. So negative things, things that you have missed out on, things that you could have done if it wasn't for this belief, the negative consequences. Step 4, start looking at other perspectives. Ask yourself, somebody who disagreed with this belief, somebody who had a completely opposite belief to this, what would their reasons be that my belief is wrong and their belief is right? And start to allow yourself to see other perspectives, to start to grey the colour rather than having it black or white. And finally, step 5, make a list of things that you could possibly achieve, things that could possibly come true, things that could happen over the next week, month, year, 5 years, 10 years, if you allowed yourself to be more flexible with this belief. That is the starting point. When you do that, it's so much easier to get into positive habits that reinforce this idea. But when you try to work on the 5%, when the 95% is disagreeing with the 5%, you're gonna be in a losing battle. You've got to tackle the 95% first, make that a little bit more malleable, and then come to the 5%. So I hope this video has helped you to start questioning your beliefs a little bit. If you don't do the action points, then it is quite likely that you will gain nothing from this video. You don't change the 95% subconscious part without putting in the work, without challenging it, without asking why. So if you want change, if you are passionate about feeling better, about changing your life, about living in a way that is meaningful and a way that you will feel proud of when you get to 95 years old, then ask yourself these questions. Put 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes to the side today or over the next week to work through these questions with one belief. And when you do it with one and you see the results that come from it, you will want to do it with all of them. So thank you for joining me for this episode. It would mean the absolute world to me if you could give it a like or a subscribe if you're on YouTube, or give it a rating if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It takes mere seconds to do, but if you believe the world would be a better place if people were more flexible with their beliefs and less judgmental, then doing those things is going to help get this out to more and more people, which is ultimately my goal. So if you do that, I am so grateful for you. I read through all of the comments, try to respond where I can, and all that's left to say is, you know what's coming. I appreciate